Today on the EOR podcast, we live with blinders on, like this is the way everybody should do it. This is the way everybody does it. And it's not.
Money is always one of the primary indicators as to why certain things happen.
This is happening in all sports.
There is something particularly painful about seeing that happen to our youth.
Am I hitting a nerve there?
Nerve would be the wrong word.
Why would they want to be part of Detroit Metro FC?
The structure is appealing, the honesty is rare, and the product is real. My team is nearly impossible to make.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the EOR podcast. I'm your host, Quinn Magnuson. Elite youth sports are getting more expensive every year, and that really raises a hard question. Are we developing the best athletes or just the ones who can afford the fees? Today, I'm joined by Alex Lubyansky, general manager and head coach of Detroit Metro FC, a soccer club challenging the traditional pay-to-play model by building a merit-based program designed to widen access without lowering standards. This conversation isn't just about soccer. It's about opportunity, accountability, economics, and what kind of system we're building for young talent. Alex, welcome to the show.
Quinn, an absolute pleasure. Big fan of the show and so thrilled to be on with you.
Thank you. So let's look. I always love to start with people's backgrounds because it often shows a window into, what they're doing today. So let's talk about early identity and being overlooked. You've actually described yourself as undersized and overlooked when you grew up in soccer. So how did that shape you in terms of your path to where you are today with Detroit Metro FC?
It's an amazing question. I look back at so many parts of my life and how lucky I am. And there's a big difference between your parents giving you a car and you buying your first car. And when I look at my soccer career as opposed to my academic one, academically, everything was given to me genetically. I had just a very easy time moving from Ukraine to the US, learning a new language, and excelling academically. There was very little effort required. I am a licensed attorney. The tests to get into college, the ACT, the test to get into law school, the LSAT, none of those things were ever a hurdle for me. So if you will, that was like getting a car. Oh, cool. Don't really value it very much. Then you look at soccer, and within soccer, I am 5'9". I'm a goalkeeper. I'm naturally pudgy. And the reason I ever hopped in the goal was when I showed up to my first ever rec soccer practice, the coach said, "All right, boys, 2 laps, unless you're the guy that stands in the rectangular thing." Well, that's what I did. I stood there and I put no effort, put very little of my energy, but somehow it was so fun. And by the time it started to matter for me, which was late high school, I started to put work in. And no business being recruited to the types of schools that matched my intellectual prowess. So I ended up at U of M, and they wouldn't even let me try out. That's the level I was. They're like, "No, you're not qualified to even try out for this team," which was the varsity team. I try out for the club team thinking it's going to be easy. Well, that club team is packed at the time with former MLS players who, at that time, their wages in the MLS were far lower than if you just came out of school and got a job at McDonald's. Former varsity players, and myself begging, borrowing, and stealing 200 people at this tryout. I ended up being like the 5th goalkeeper on that team. Making a short story long, and I apologize,
No.
ended up earning quite a pathway within the game that led me to a trial at Dynamo Kiev, which at the time was the number 4 club in the world. And that was earning a car, buying a car. And that passion, while being totally maladaptive in other ways, is still at 40 years old, something I'll never forget and never repay. And that's what led me down this path.
Wow. So just to clarify, you said U of M. Are you meaning University of Michigan then?
Yes.
Okay, good. because obviously I was thinking Detroit, but U of M could be many schools. So thank you for clarifying. So did you like? I'm chuckling at that story because you and I talked before the show about my son, who was a good goaltender, at the age of, 10, 11. He was shoulder tapped by the program in our area. It's like, you have talent and we think you could go on to play, with like it was in the Whitecaps, Vancouver Whitecaps program. And so they were like, I guess you could call almost like a farm system, and they would train young players. And they told him how good he was, and they told us how great he was. And we kind of fell into that trap too of like, he was a good athlete and all, but he was the fifth goaltender there. A little bit chubby, like you said you were. And but the thing is, it's almost like they'd already made their decision. And that's where the politics comes in. So here's a question I want to ask you though. When you were younger and you were coming up through the different, soccer ranks and moving your way up, even to, that club team you mentioned, and then on to Dynamo Kiev. But when you were young, were you aware of how money or connection
Oh,
influenced opportunity? Like, when did that become something that was like, huh, the politics of this? Oh, he got, chosen because of X or whatever. Like, when did that start to kick in for you? At what age?
it's an amazing question. Um, Candidly, the reason I say college is not to say anything happened to me good or bad in college. But college, you make this intellectual transition for the first time in your life where you're no longer rewarded for regurgitation, which is what academia is in the US during secondary school. You hear something, you remember it, you write it back down, you get a really high grade. In college, and certainly law school, when this became a hyper awareness for me, you start to be rewarded for thinking. And I really started to see a number of red flags that I was completely oblivious to as a youth that started to indicate to me that there's something just not sitting right about the way that soccer is structured in our country, in the US. Um, so I would say in college, I started to really think about it. In law school, I got hyper focused on it because what a incredible intellectual development that is. Law school really rewards thinking. And in my professional life, it became patently obvious to me that the only way that I could actually not just identify the problem, but solve it was to gain complete professional autonomy and build something that doesn't yet exist so that you could really solve for the problem above and beyond simply identifying that it exists. And it's taken me 40 years of my life, but here we are. And I couldn't be more proud of the group that we've put together with Detroit Metro and the alignment of mission, vision, and the execution. It is so easy to identify the problem, but to actually build a system that is different took me 40 years. So here we are.
Yeah. So before we get into Detroit Metro FC, let me ask you one more question about your youth. How involved were your parents in your soccer career growing up? Because there are parents who are like hyper involved. There's ones that are like, they appreciate your kids are in sport, and others that kind of are just really not involved at all. But when I asked you the question about when did you become aware of how money and influence really changed the politics of sport, especially soccer, were your parents aware of it? Did you hear them talking about it in the background at all?
Incredible question. So I grew up in Farmington Hills, Michigan, but more accurate would be I grew up in the former Soviet Union because that's where we were born. And when we came across, I was 3, my brother was 8, and we grew up in my parents' house. So I don't think we had the traditional story or the traditional parenting that I'm seeing now that I'm on the inside of the system as an adult, as part of my professional career. So I did not grow up with parents that looked at soccer as anything other than kind of a burden on the family. They wanted me to have nothing to do with it. They wanted me to play chess. They wanted me to stay physically safe. They thought my brain was worth way too much to expose myself to injury risk. However, and God bless them, they let me play. They did not force me to play. They did not encourage me to play. It was a big thing for them to just let me play. And now that I'm a parent, I look at things a certain way through a different lens, but I'm 10 times more appreciative than I was as a youth because I know how hard that was for them, knowing, again, where I would end up professionally. I think they had a pretty good idea. My brother is one of the best doctors in the US. We were given an intellectual car.
Mhm.
Um, and they let me risk it because I loved the game. And I can't thank them enough. But there was no pushing.
We're gonna get into parents in a few minutes here, because the amount of content I'm seeing on social media about overbearing parents and the parents that get a little bit too in Canada, down in the States, they call them helicopter parents, and here we call them snowplow parents just because of the ice. But parents that, go to the coach and tell them this and tell them that. But hey, I want to start with this question. So for people outside of youth soccer or just outside of youth sports in general, let's explain the pay to play model because it seems to be far more prevalent, obviously, today than it ever was when I was a kid. You're younger than me, so I'm assuming than when you were a kid, but it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And now you have major corporations buying up all the soccer fields in the States or buying up all the hockey rinks, in Minnesota, in Michigan even. What does the pay to play model look like, and what does that actually mean?
That's an excellent question. And I want to, on the front end, make sure that I'm very clear about something, which is I don't think pay to play itself is inherently flawed. I think that there are good organizations within the pay to play model, and there are bad organizations within the pay to play model. And I'm happy to dig into that quite a bit deeper. But the model essentially is this: the gatekeeper is two pronged, one of which is sporting ability to an extent. I don't believe it to be the number one.
Mhm.
But the number one is the ability to pay. If you cannot pay, you cannot be part of pay to play. Now, from a fee perspective, you are absolutely right. The amount that it costs to play travel soccer, that's what it used to be called. I don't think it's called anymore because that's too simplistic. If you're going to charge a certain fee, you need to come up with some acronyms. You need to come up with some elite. You need to come up with some academy language. Otherwise, oh, that's not worth the money. But for reference, I played for my city's travel team, which I barely made. It was not easy.
Yeah.
And that was probably about 300 bucks a year. And I'm still best friends with a number of those guys. We stayed on that team. We didn't jump to some other team. We just grew it and got pretty relevant at that time as far as how good we got. Now, I would say your average pay to play club, at least in the markets I'm familiar with, which are, most markets within the United States, it's 4,000 a year. But if you're going to the elite slash academy slash, dare I say, residential model, uh-oh, now you're talking upwards of 80,000 a year. And that is unreal, but that is a model. And when you start talking about that model, generally, and I know this absolutely transcends soccer. This is not soccer specific because I enjoy movies. So I watch King Richard and I watch
Mhm.
The Story. And when they go down to that elite tennis academy, there is a very popular scene about to be able to support the top end of this academy. And they point to a tennis court where clearly those players are not world class tennis players. They have to subsidize those that actually are funded. Same in soccer. So if you have a residential academy and it's 80,000 a year, the ones that pay 80,000, let's not kid ourselves. They're not as good as the ones that are there on full ride scholarships. And there's very few that are there on that actual full ride scholarship. Now, those are special players. It is hard to get that offer, but there's not a lot of these programs around the US. So there's markets like Detroit where a few times there's been an academy, a residence that's come in and it's failed because you got to be really good at sales to get someone to pay 80K. Like you need a talented business team. So a lot of the times these academies do fail, but the ones that have succeeded, they succeed because they're able to sell the slots for the lower ability level players to subsidize the actual elite players who you have to somehow, once again, justify where might they go next. And that's just a really tough model for us to recognize where, again, my background is almost exclusively in Europe. I grew up with that mentality. A proper soccer player should be completely free. There's no optionality there. You don't go into an actual academy in Europe and be charged. That would be blasphemous.
Hmm.
But that's our model in the US.
So on that point, are the academies in Europe where you say that the kids are not being charged, is that then are they just identified as being talented, and so that the academy really only really takes in the best players that they feel, have the most potential, most talent, and they're willing to invest in those kids, correct?
Very good. Yes, there is no paywall. There is no secondary qualification mechanism. It is strictly ability. And when it's strictly ability, at least there's the opportunity for it to be run ethically, honestly, and well. Now, again, soccer is a difficult sport. It's not track and field. So y- I've been part of soccer my whole life. I've coached, I've been a sporting director in Europe, I've identified talent. I get it wrong all the time. You have to, by definition. If you get it right all the time, something's wrong with you. You're lying. So I have had two players in front of me and chosen the wrong one more times than I can count. But here's what it's never been. It's never been because one kid's parent gave me 20 bucks. And that is something that happens rampantly all over. And that is something where if you remove any monetary aspect other than ability, you've just solved for one of the variables. Are there others? Quinn, there's so many others. But that's just one way where what we're doing at Metro is meant to cut back on bias. And we don't guarantee that we get the right player. How could we? No one can. It's not track and field. But we can guarantee that our process is pure. And we want to spread this process as quickly and aggressively as we can. Because I know there's really good natured people out there that would love to do what we're doing. And I'm not secretive about it. I'm trying to put it out to market so that not only somebody in San Diego who has no possible way to compete against me in a game, but I would be happy if my next door neighbor took my model and beat my team. I'm looking for that. I want this to spread like wildfire so that we can actually have a meritocratic system of soccer throughout the US that starts to put us on the map in a real way. And that's how it is everywhere else. And we wonder why the national team doesn't have the success that it could. There's one pretty big indicator. The entire system is built differently than to reward the ability of a player.
And this isn't just soccer. This is all youth sports as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is hockey, basketball, football. Like you said, track and field, it's pretty obvious. So you run fast, you don't run fast. But all these sports, what is it about? Like I'm Canadian, and it is definitely becoming part of our youth sports system here is the pay to play system. And it seems like the organizations that started this, and I want to talk about when this started in the United States, but they're preying on the egos of parents, right? Or maybe even the fragile egos of parents that telling them that their kid has potential and talent, and if they just pay this much, it can be part of this, like you said, elite or academy, or they give it a fancy name. Doesn't happen as much in Europe, or if at all in Europe, but when did this start? And not to be a complete naysayer, Alex, because I absolutely love what you're doing in Detroit, but as capitalistic as the United States is, and the groups that are now, like I said before, buying up all the rinks, buying up all the sporting facilities and whatever, like, how do you stop this? Or do you just become the outlier in that environment?
I'm not a historian, so I can't point to a year specifically, but I know when it started to shift.
Yeah, it feels like the last
And
couple decades for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, it did. And when that shift started, it just kind of snowballed. It started in a small way and it was challenging because you had more optionality. You had more community based clubs that were more akin to the sorts of clubs that Quinn, you and I played our sports in when we were younger. It's very hard to find those now. Rec programs barely exist. They're largely irrelevant from a sporting performance standpoint once the players start to hit about 10, 11, 12 years old. The business is only growing. So, you look at, and by the way, parents are very well intentioned. They want their kids to thrive. So, in a sport that isn't like track and field, there's a clear advantage to having your child at 5 years old be on the elite academy team as opposed to at 7 or at 9 or at 12, because those teams start to mesh and get ingrained, and it's harder and harder under the current ecosystem to take the spot of another player. It's clear. If you're substantially better at soccer, you have a chance of knocking a kid off a roster. But if you're just about close, and even someone who's incredibly well trained and well intentioned, but gets things wrong all the time, are you really going to take that chance when you know that, 13-year-old Johnny, if you will, has already paid his full club dues since he was 5, already has teammates that he's friends with? You're not going to take his spot. The only sort of way you could take their spot is a program, sorry, a program like ours, where while we have 50 players in my program between the ages of 16 and 38, we don't have a single guy that is part of it. That's not allowed. Everyone knows they're trying out every single day. And I'd bring this up in preseason because it's incredibly important, because all we are is a filtration system. I don't claim to be a development academy. No chance. That's just inaccurate. We're a filtration system. And we say on day one, you should be here if in 10 years you have a smile on your face because you've been replaced by a superior player. You should be here if in 10 days you have a smile on your face that you've been replaced by a superior player. All we are here to do is create an actual merit based system where we can filter in an honest way. And I promise you guys, I'm going to choose the wrong starting 11 more often than not. But if you enjoy that idea and you like that my son is banned from ever coming to this program as he gets older, you should stay here and you should bring people to also be evaluated, not signed. We don't charge for tryouts. We don't care what your parents do or what you do. That's not part of it. It is a soccer evaluation. That is the only mechanism that matters to us, is an in the moment soccer evaluation. That is, in my view, actually pure.
Yeah. One of the things that growing up and having played Division 1 college football and going on to professional football and being part of that very high performance environment, I never thought I'd actually say this, but there are, well, it came up during the Olympics this past few weeks about the difference between the Norwegian youth sports system and the American sports system. And I'm not saying, I'm not even going to go and say one is better than the other. I mean, but what I will say is this: in the Scandinavian system, they don't keep score until the age of 12 in any scoring type games. So soccer, hockey, football, things like that. They don't keep score. And there are no tiers, meaning there's no levels in those sports. Everybody participates. You get placed on a team. There's more community teams, like you mentioned, and they seem to be thriving from it. And this actually goes back to my effort over results, philosophy. And what I'm building here is there's so many kids that are left out in the cold because they get tiered and leveled and this pay to play model especially in the United States at the age of 6 and 7. These kids haven't grown yet. They don't even know what competition is for the most part. What is your feeling, Alex, on switching to a model? And I don't know if you do this with younger players or if you've seen it, but what is your thought on the concept of we're not going to keep score, we're not going to rank, we're not going to have any sort of levels until the age of, let's say, I'll even lower it, let's say 10. Do you think that is beneficial to the development of youth in sports? And would it help the system clean itself up a bit?
I see value in that model. That is refreshing to hear. And I was unaware of the Norwegian system.
Mhm.
Um, for us, for Metro, We are not a youth club whatsoever.
Mhm.
We will sign a 13-year-old if they're unbelievably special, but we're not a youth club. And we never plan to be. We have no desire to go that route. We support that model. I love it. I would love to see someone else take their time, energy, effort, and implement it. I think it could be challenging. It would probably need to be created by somebody who had a similar addiction to this space that I do, that was predominantly focused only on youth, and could be a set of well-intentioned parents. That would be awesome. And they could build something like that. It would be hard. I think that they are in a direct competition against pay to play, and that becomes the big challenge. My organization has no skin in the game whatsoever in the youth space. We are not a youth soccer organization. We are a filtration mechanism for those that actually want to become pros. And pros drives me nuts, Quinn, but pros doesn't mean pro soccer players. If really you're talking about pro soccer player, and just simply go on Google and take a look, who makes more money? A pro soccer player in the US, or an attorney, an accountant, a dentist, a doctor, an entrepreneur, anything, literally anything is a more lucrative future than pro soccer player. So we want to create habits within our group that is selected for soccer ability that will translate to actual professional success. Now, might a few of them go on and play some pro soccer? Sure, it already has happened. We sent a guy to Germany last year, but all of them have to become people that show up punctually to their job, that show up with a good attitude, that show up and meet company standards. That's why we have team standards. And we're not looking to monetize that. We're just looking to do it for the good of our organization, the players within it. And again, so someone can take it and copy it. So if someone can take it, amend it, and apply it to young players, that would be deeply, deeply meaningful. It's just not our space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to get your opinion on it because I know, having grown up obviously in youth soccer and you've been around it, your entire life, you would have an opinion on that. And I appreciate the answer that you gave because I think, like I said, I would never have said that 10 years ago. I remember people, saying, "Oh, we're gonna start a league, and we don't keep score. The kids have to play every single position so they learn the game." And I'm like, "Yeah, but my kid's a goalie or my kid's a, right tackle in football or whatever." And now I am like literally I'm waving the flag for that. In fact, I go back to there's a youth football league, full tackle football league for 10, 11-year-olds back in my hometown that once again, every game the teams get 2 plays to run. And then they add an extra play every week so the kids learn development. The kids have to play every single position. And the coaches have to report this to the referees at the game. Okay, this kid is now playing this position, he played this position last half and so forth, and you have to mix it up. And there's no scoring. No. The kids are keeping score, of course they are. But that's just, it seems to be human nature. But I really like that model because I remember growing up in the 1970s and my mom couldn't afford to pay the hockey registration when I was young. It was like $50. And people would, donate, or maybe there'd be a local businessman who would help pay for some of the kids who were a little poorer, and that was my situation. But I never felt this separation between me and my teammates, financially, socioeconomically, ever. Like that just didn't exist. I didn't know how much money my teammates' parents made. I just knew that, my mom struggled a little bit, but I kind of figured that was just the norm and everybody gets to play together. And I feel like we've just sort of lost that innocence, and that's what I love about, the message you're sending with Detroit Metro FC is, like you said, you're not a youth sports model. You're 16 and above, but you'll take some younger ones, but for the most part, you have the mentality of kids just need to play, and they just need to be developed, and they shouldn't be, bankrupted because of it. So let's talk about Detroit Metro FC, the alternative model. So what makes your model specifically and fundamentally different from pay to play? You've kind of touched upon it, but let's nail it down into, a few sentences here.
Yeah. So we are rewarding merit in the way that merit is rewarded in the highest tiers of football around the world. So you go to a country in Europe, pick a country, and it could be smaller than the small city within Michigan where I reside. And they have multiple tiers within their professional ecosystem. And if you win in tier 4, you go to tier 3, not because you have funding, quite the opposite, actually, but because the system is built in a way to reward merit. And it goes all the way up, and not only within the relevant nation, but also continentally. So in Europe, if you get to tier 1 of your country and then win, next year you're playing not just in your country, but across all of Europe. And you're actually compensated for that. And it's not nominal, it's enough to actually have a business, which is unheard of in the history of our country here. There is no reward for being good at your sport here that I am aware of. And this is not just soccer.
Yeah, no
Now,
relegation and promotion like there is. Yeah.
it's different in the NBA, the NFL, because people watch those sports and we have the best athletes on the planet and they come here and they're broadcast and people love it. So it's lucrative to win because there's more eyeballs. Soccer here is not in the top tier globally whatsoever. It's generally retirees come here and play at the tail end of their career, or Americans are looking to showcase at young enough ages that they can still jump to where it really matters, which is Europe. And I'm addicted to soccer and I can't watch soccer here other than my own team because it's my team. I love it. I want to grow it. It's really hard to watch soccer here. Um, so merit needs to be rewarded. What did we do in order to reward merit other than what we've already touched on? Here's one. And this is just something we thought of that we could do. We put out a challenge. It's called the Merit Cup. Just like our tryouts are free, as is the Merit Cup. And that means if there's a pro team locally, which there's some, of course, they can enter. If there's an amateur team, they can enter. If there's a group of guys that used to play D1 and they want to put a team together, they can enter. Zero barrier to entry and zero entrance fee. The only thing that you might be cognizant of, and I know some teams are, and it's fine, their choice is reputation. God forbid we lose at this, and we're supposed to be a quote unquote pro team. Well, whoever wins that then plays us. And if they beat us, we cut them a $10,000 check. And just like the movie Semi-Pro, it's a big check. And just like the movie Semi-Pro, this will now be our second season, but I remember last year really well. I'm sure they ran that thing to their local bank as fast as they could and were like, cash this in because this is going to bounce. But we did, in fact, lose that game. And it's not about us winning or losing that game. It's about incentive. It's about creating a system that can start to reward merit. Now, do I hope that somebody with far more resources than us does the same, but gives away $1 million? Yeah, we don't have it. We don't have it. We have 10,000 and come get it from us. So there's another way that we've rewarded merit within the US ecosystem, because the only way to really do it is to come up with your own idea and execute on it. And that's what we've done.
So I'm going to ask the red, white, and blue question. How does Detroit Metro FC exist and operate if you don't have, I'm not going to say even high fees at all? Like where is your subsidization or your support coming from?
Excellent question. So first and foremost, we have an owner who is one of the best human beings I ever come across in my life. We met, we struck a relationship very quickly. We're 4 years into this relationship. I consider him not just the owner and not just a partner of mine, but also a very close friend. Very family centric, loves the game, amazing person. So there's our funding, because to get something like this off the ground costs money. And it's not coming from the players. By definition, it can't. Otherwise, we're just lying to ourselves. So that's step one. Then we went to market and we started to attract sponsors. At this point, we're at roughly 20 corporate sponsors. Cool. I'm really couldn't be happier about that. What a great way for corporations that have budget set aside to get involved and to make a big difference. This is a huge difference. Some of our guys cannot afford any version of soccer as it exists in the US. Like you said, a $50 fee might actually be a barrier. It is. So awesome. Then we decided that this is actually pretty cool to watch. We're not as good as MLS players. Let's not kid ourselves. We're pretty dang good though. And that's fun to watch from a sporting perspective. So, how do you make that even more fun? We invest heavily in every game that we host. So, we play at a beautiful venue. We have a DJ. We have drummers. We have bounce houses for kids. We serve alcohol. We serve delicious food. And we have a fan experience. And it's unlike any other team within our tier of US soccer as it currently exists. So that's attracting a lot of attention, a lot of fans. And this is year two. It's only getting bigger and better. So we're constantly putting out more exciting events. Now, we don't want to go the route of strictly entertainment. There's some organizations that are the gold standard within their sport of strictly entertainment. Cool, but we're merit based and entertaining. So we want to play diehard competitive soccer. And that has been a model that, while still early, is starting to gain real traction. And this is not a 1 year project. This is a lifelong project. I'm 40. I can't wait to hand this off to the next generation that's in my locker room today that is going to coach this in a decade, in two, so I can just be a fan and watch what this grows into.
I love the business model because you found someone obviously with fairly deep pockets that wants to support this without, and I'm sure he doesn't want his name emblazoned, over everything that Detroit at Metro FC does. I was thinking you were going to say Mike Ilitch is throwing you a few shekels, and donating Little Caesars pizzas. Um, but that's awesome that you can run this program like that. And you're right. It would be great to see other programs. I believe that everything always comes full circle. I think everything always comes full circle. We there's this pendulum that goes too far, and okay, when I say right and left people, I'm not talking politically, but swings all the way to the right, and then it comes back to the left, and it somehow kind of balances itself out at some point. I think there is room because what has happened is, like I said, back when I was a child, everybody got to play. It was a nominal fee, but it wasn't through the roof, and there wasn't year-round hockey. It was just hockey season. That was it, or football season. That was it, right? And then, like you and I talked about in the late '90s, early 2000s, this pay-to-play model, because people with money was like, how do we make money from this, from from the egos of parents? The reason why, a business model like yours with Detroit Metro FC is the outlier right now is largely because of the American mentality of win at all costs, always be the best, and if you gotta pay for it, you pay for it. Even if you bankrupt your family, you pay for it. And if you're playing in a non-pay to play league, or if you're playing in what's called a rec league, well, you must suck. You not very good soccer. Your family must be poor, and things like that. And it's just creating this sickening, us versus them mentality, which I've hated, but I still feel like it with groups like yours, people are going to see the value in it because at some point in time, the bubble has to burst. Families are finally going to say, and I think it's going to be the Gen Z kids that we have now when they become parents, and it's happening. They're the ones that are going to say, sorry, no. Gen X has been a big problem, right? Like you're a millennial, but Gen X has been a big problem because we wanted our kids to have everything and we were willing to pay for it and we are willing to go to the coaches and tell them how to coach our kids and snowplow and helicopter. And I think it's going to come full circle with Gen Z. But let me ask you this based on the FC business model that you run. Some people would say, and going back to this point that I just made, is that when you don't pay high fees for something, commitment level drops. What would you say to them?
That's definitely the counter argument, the counterpoint.
Yeah.
And I have seen it. I've seen it within pay to play quite a bit. If you're on one of those teams and you're starting to get to the tail end of your quote unquote youth career and you already committed to whatever path you have next, some of these kids, high school, juniors, seniors, they just stop showing up. And there's still finances involved. It's just finances that their parents gave them. They didn't earn those. So there's your commitment drop. Is there a commitment drop simply because you didn't pay money to join? I think quite the opposite. I think if you form it right, you earned your car. You earned your way onto my team. My team is nearly impossible to make. The guys on it are not on it. So if you think about, wow, what does that maybe mean to a player? It means that they have, with a straight face, something that they can be proud of. And if there were 1,000 clubs like that and not just mine, my God, what a difference maker that would be. That might actually lead to something that I rarely, if ever, see anymore, which is called club pride. You look at Europe, you look at community clubs that have a professional team at the top and then fully funded youth academies below. And by the way, those coaches are not being paid much, if at all. We're the only country I'm aware of that you make a proper living coaching kids. Like, you coach kids in Europe, it's a passion. It is not a profession. That's why I wanted to flip the narrative. That's why I took my professional development so seriously, is I wanted to make sure that when all was said and done, I could have a responsibly built life where I can be a great husband, father, all of those things, and still have soccer be part of it and not worry that I can't pay my mortgage. And I'm lucky, because if I didn't have that piece, I would still just be coaching pay to play soccer and towing the company line, because you would have to. And I don't judge anybody for that. I just got really lucky and really intentional really early that I was going to build a life where I didn't have to do that. And I've succeeded.
So for parents of the younger players in your program, so from what I understand, your program starts at the age of 16 and you would take potentially 13, 14, 15-year-old if
Oh
they
yeah.
were uber talented. Okay. And it goes up to 38.
Older than me.
Older than,
There
oh,
is,
wow.
so candidly, there is
Yeah,
no
let's
minimum.
talk
There
about
is
the
no
age ranges.
maximum.
Yeah, I want to talk about the age ranges and how does someone start? Like, why does let's say a high school kid who's talented at 16, 17, why would they want to be part of Detroit Metro FC? Let's start there.
The structure is appealing. The honesty is rare, and the product is real. So if they come in here and they're selected for it, they know that our end goal is to get them optionality and power in their life and nothing else. So if they come here at 16, 17, it's not because we promised them an MLS contract. That's insane. It's not because we promised them a pathway to Europe. That's insane. It's because we promised them that when they're done, if they earn those things, they can freely pursue them. And when I say when they're done, it could be tomorrow, it could be in 10 years. It's their choice. We don't lock anyone in. Or they could go and do the one thing that I consider to be actually elite in this country, which is weaponize a sport to get into an Ivy League school. If you can take this and you can showcase to Princeton's head coach that you just played with our guys, some of which did in fact play professional soccer before and will in fact play professional soccer after. We're just not a pro team, nor do we intend to ever be. Amateur soccer is where it's at in the US. It's not pro soccer. So we are a proper amateur team with former pros and future pros. That's for someone else to do, not us. That is optionality and honesty. And to me, that is as appealing as anything else. It's not that it's free. Who cares? I mean, what if it was just free and a low level? But it's free and a high level. Again, I was a sporting director in Europe. I know market value. I know that we don't have a player that can play in Europe. I am not trying to tell anyone that we do, but we could. If we got the best of the best 15-year-old kid who currently resides in Michigan, here is their current optionality. Continue to do pay to play here, Or if they're special, and I mean, Quinn, I mean special, they're going to get invited to Miami. Inter Miami is going to give them a fully funded academy deal, but they're 15. So do they want to move down to Miami? Do their parents want them to move down to Miami? Again, God bless my parents that they even let me play at all. They didn't want to, but that's not a great solution for a lot of people. Solution for some, but a lot of people want their kids to stay home. Well, there you go. Keep playing, pay to play, and play with us. We don't care. We're not trying to, we have nothing to do with youth soccer. We are a completely different lane that has yet to exist. We're a third door, if you will. And that's powerful. And that's why a kid might choose us. Assuming we even choose them, it would be very, 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 very hard for a kid to walk up to us and tell us their resume. We intentionally try not to do that. We say, hey, little ego, come try out, bro. Come try out against our guys. And if we think you're good, you'll be part of it. So if you watch sort of our release, I gotten some blowback, and that doesn't bother me at all because I would give us blowback. I would say, you know what, this is just another way to charge 90 grand in 2 years. You're just trying to grow the little pod so that you can become paid. No, we're not. No, we're not. We fully
The,
committed.
the
That
drug
is
dealer
not where
giving you
this is
that
headed.
first, yeah, the drug dealer
So
giving you
the
that first
blowback
dibs.
has been, hey, how dare you say that my kid isn't good enough for your fully funded academy? And you've already screened yourself out just by sending me that email, bud. Don't send me that email. Send your kid to the same open tryout as the kid that can't afford a thing shows up to. You wear a white shirt with no club badge. You don't send me a video. You don't send me a resume. You certainly don't talk to me, parent. I have no time, energy, or desire to talk to you. And you send your kid and you sign a liability waiver and you sit in the car, and I will tell your kid whether they're part of the 50 guys. So
Wow.
I've gotten blowback.
I can see why. Like I said, it's in North America, and especially in the United States, we live in such a bubble of with blinders on. Like, this is the way everybody should do it. This is the way everybody does it, and it's not. I would say the American youth sports system is highly unique. You do not see this replicated in many other countries, if at all, in anywhere else in the world. But this is what's causing the problem, is because of the and don't get me wrong, I promote and I like capitalism. That's fine. But when it starts to wreck youth sports, that's kind of where I draw the line. Um, Here's what I wanted to ask you, because I wanted some clarification on. Okay, and I'll give you an example, Alex. So, for example, in high school football, whether it be in Canada or United States, so if you're a talented high school football player, well, number one, you're already playing for just your high school team. There are high school teams, and that league is considered to be the best in the area for the most part. And then maybe you get a scholarship to Division 1, to the subsidization 2 and 3 and whatever, with the goal of you're one in a million, you make it to the NFL or CFL like I did. So for a kid at 16, 17, they're still in high school. They were playing for their high school team. Maybe they're playing for a club team, because I'm not quite sure what's more prevalent down there, high school or club teams, but I imagine every region is a little bit different. But would the majority of the kids that come to your program at 16, 17, 18, their senior year, be coming to you because the competition where they're currently playing isn't good enough. It's not helping them because they're better than the talent they're playing against, and also they want to obtain a NCAA scholarship, because it seems to me like that would make sense. It's like, I'm far too talented for this high school league. I'm gonna go play at Detroit Metro FC with the hopes of being able to get a scholarship. So my question for that age group in your program, Alex, is that one of the number one things that you would be trying to, I don't want to say offer, I'm not saying that you have connections with any of the colleges, universities, but is that one of the perks of being part of Detroit Metro FC, is that you would probably have a better chance of obtaining a Division 1 scholarship?
I'd say you'd have a far lower chance.
Far
Far
lower.
lower because Division 1 scholarship, how does it work in the US? First of all, any American has a near zero chance. It is an internationally driven program at this point. There is a far greater incentive to bring an international player into the US than to bring a US player into the US for Division I college soccer. If you look across the board, the number of domestics that actually play meaningful minutes and get meaningful scholarships across D1 men's soccer are very low. It's almost entirely an incentive that is developed on both ends to help others come to the US on an F1 visa. Now, you have to remember, Quinn, I am, in fact, an attorney, and I'm also, and probably to my financial detriment, honest. So my answer is it would be harder. Now, it's already incredibly hard. So I'm happy to answer to any level of detail or depth, but what you won't get is a sales pitch saying, I'm going to get your kid a scholarship to play college soccer. You'll get the exact opposite because there is absolutely no financial incentive for me to do anything other than educate our player pool.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if it were my children, which they're not allowed to be, again, I won't let my kids play for me. I would tell them, if your actual goal is to become a successful professional, use soccer to try to get into a school. Ivy League schools generally don't have athletic scholarships at all.
No, they do. Yeah, it's all subsidized
You get
financial aid.
preferred admission. And you look at the average, not just income, because income is way too reductive of a concept, but the average life quality and networking and benefit of paying, and college, but it's a whole different conversation, of course, Quinn, but college is just doing this as well. And a lot of people are deciding against college. But if you go to the best of the best, you go to a Princeton, you go to a Yale, you go to a Harvard, you're going to get that value. You're going to capture, no matter what that tuition is, you are going to end up in a room at a table with somebody who is really, really hard to get to. That without going to an Ivy League, you won't. So if you can use soccer to get preferential admission to an Ivy League, it is night and day a more advantageous thing to achieve using soccer than using soccer to get a low-level professional contract in the US. Not even close.
Yeah, I might. Okay, so you're blowing my mind now because I would assume that the program has the value proposition of the program. And don't get me wrong, skill development, life lessons, learning to be a professional, all of that is fantastic. But for these players to and they're not paying for it. Okay, so we're taking money out of the picture. For them to look at the Detroit Metro FC model and go, I really want to be a part of that. There has to be an end game for them. So what is the average end game for the younger, let's say 16 to 22-year-old, because that's still high school, college. And then let's talk about the older players that are in your program. What is the end game for them for being part of this program? Because once again, we live in a country. I mean, I'm Canada, but let's just say in the States where everything has to have an end game, a journey, destination of why we're doing this this step in the journey. So, what is the average goal for the player that comes into your program after Detroit Metro FC? How are they using your program to take that next step, jump, whatever it happens to be, or are they not at all?
Optionality. We're giving them optionality and we're giving them a network. So without charging Ivy League tuition, you look at the kind of men we have already attracted and will continue to attract. You look at the leadership of the organization. You look at the staff of the organization. No matter which sphere you are in, you are bound to meet people that will be helpful to you in some way, shape, or form. So our average player is 25 years old. Our average player plays because they love it and they're incredibly good, but they're able to do something else. So they are already accountants, engineers, attorneys, and it's fun. It gets to still be part of their life as we build to that higher actual end game. And that higher actual end game is all of that plus bringing in players young enough and talented enough that they might have the optionality to go somewhere bigger. And somewhere bigger within our sport, it's Europe. That's it. It's can they get an opportunity in Europe? And again, I was a European sporting director. How do you decide to allow an American to earn an opportunity in Europe. And at the current moment, there is very obvious feedback on Americans in Europe, which is they're products of the infrastructure that already exists in that system. They're coming across and they're a little bit entitled. They're a little bit unwilling to work hard. They're a little bit unwilling to earn their way through this contract. They're a little bit lazy. Our program is different. Now, again, we're not there yet. But do I believe that in 3 years, the first one of our players that actually develops under this ecosystem with this incentive model, with this group of men, and goes across the pond and gets an opportunity, they will not be entitled. They will not be lazy. They will flip that narrative and they will earn the opportunity to show themselves at the highest level within the world's game, which is nowhere to be seen here. You have to go across. You have to go to Europe. There is no other way.
Mm. The football slash soccer, okay, sorry, soccer ecosystem in the world, but in the United States and North America in general is so man, it's so much different than the other 4 major sports, than baseball, hockey, football, basketball, right? No offense to the rest of the sports, but I'm just saying the 5 majors, right? It's so different because it soccer is of the 5 sports, it is the most international. I'd say hockey probably would be second, hockey, basketball, right? But it's just there's so many moving parts and different places to play, and one thing you said earlier kinda discouraged me when we were talking about scholarships in the United States, about how the majority of NCAA scholarships for the soccer teams, Division I soccer teams, are being taken up by European and foreign players. That kinda saddens me because it really takes away from that American kid or that Canadian kid here, right, that is good enough to play at the D1 level, but is being, pushed out of the way because the coaches just wanna win, and now with don't even get me started on NIL and transfer portal, because that's just horrible, but so when it comes back to the Detroit Metro FC model, I guess the question I have, specifically because 'cause you're in soccer, is this model scalable? Like, is can there be a bunch of Metro FCs all around North America or even just in the United States being funded by, philanthropic business people, whatever, that you could even create a league out, a full-blown league out of it that would, I'm not gonna say challenge MLS, but become does it shit, man. Alex, does it need to become a viable option as far as something people would watch? Or do you see the Detroit Metro FC model, if it did scale up, as it's strictly just being what it currently is now? It's a developmental program. It's not pay for play. We're not trying to sell, $500 tickets to the championship game. It literally is just pure and honest and grassroots.
There is another league already in the US. It's called the USL. And they have made an announcement that, and don't quote me on this, but in 2028, they're going to launch ProRel. So there's going to be a war of the leagues, MLS, USL.
Hmm.
I don't know where that heads. Then there's also US soccer, which has PLS, Pro League standards, and they have certain requirements for clubs within leagues and then leagues themselves to be tiered within US soccer. There's a lot of moving parts. Soccer is such a fresh sport in the US. It is not an established institution. So, and again, I have no intent to discredit anything. It is hard to start anything new in any realm, sport, business, law, it's hard. So, can we actually scale under the current ecosystem? The answer is no. The answer is no. We have funding. We're intentional with our funding. There is no ego here. There is no desire to look cool. The only thing that makes a hint of sense to an actual business driven, passion driven, meritocratic system is to build what we built and tell our guys go to Europe. Now, if US soccer were to change, which it might, fundamentally hosting a World Cup along with Canada and Mexico often leads to a bit of progress and a bit of change. That could be very interesting. But at the moment, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And that's not where I feel our time is best spent. Our time is best spent building in public, which is what we're doing, creating a third door, which is what we're doing, giving it away for free, which is what we're doing, and hoping a few more philanthropic people will decide that is a much better use of our resources than joining some other pro league. That's really the choice right now. Do you drop a billion with a B and try to get into the MLS? Do you drop however many million the USL is? And these things always fluctuate. Those are largely ego plays.
Mhm.
Or do you try to do something like this, which is completely outside of the entirety of the system, completely autonomous, completely unreliant on somebody else's approval, and insert it into an institution? And to me, the only institutions that actually have a prayer of being an intelligible business are in Europe. They're not in the US. So that's what we're doing. And I don't know. Again, just like youth soccer, that's not our space. Our goal is not to start a league and to change US soccer forever. Our goal is to start an actual third door and give it away for free. And maybe that makes us naive, but I know where our heart is. And I know that what we're doing is already drawing interest from other parts of the country. And I love it.
Mhm. Well, I think if there's enough, because sort of money makes the world go round, it certainly does in the United States. I think if there's enough people with influence and money who want to see this happen and make this happen, it'll happen. Because not everything has to be about winning championships and trophies and getting to the highest level of a particular sport, right? It can be just about developing good young citizens, good young people, good young athletes, which it sounds like what you're doing. Let's wrap things up here, Alex. I could talk for 3 more hours with you, but um, if youth sports in general, let's just say youth sports in general, and you could speak specifically to soccer, but if youth sports continues on the current trajectory of the pay to play model, and I alluded, earlier that I think it will come back to middle, but who knows? But if it continues down the current path, what worries you most about that?
The bad organizations, again, there's great ones, and my kids do pay to play soccer, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we've been able to give them that opportunity. We're lucky. But the bad organizations, that's what worries me. The ones that sign you to a team without, by no one has a team structure anymore. It's not the first, second, third. It's not ABC. It's colors you can't keep track of. So it's already confusing. And then they sign you to the blue team with the potential that you'll be on black on month 3, or they sign you to the blue team, but you're actually on the gold team, which is lower, but they deceived you. It's that stuff. And there's so much of it, Quinn.
Yeah.
There's so much of it. So you go down that path even further. I I struggle to think what could be worse. I've seen it happen in other industries, of course, but there is something particularly painful about seeing that happen to our youth. It's different when private equity buys up a bunch of dental practices and maybe I have 3, 4 fillings that I didn't really need, but it was kind of a marginal call. Okay, that's my teeth. I'm okay.
Yeah.
But if you're going to tell my kid the wrong team and the wrong information and overinflate the resume status of your coaching staff and give them all of this false hope where at 18, 19, 20 they wake up and go, my god, I was just tricked. That's traumatic. That's traumatic. And that's what worries me the most.
Yeah. And I would say it's the parents that are being the tricked the easiest are the ones that are the parents of kids under 16. It's the 8 to 16, 15, 16-year-olds because at that point you don't know how good your kid is, but they might be running circles around every other kid on the field, which is a conversation for another day because that doesn't mean shit. Sorry. Um, Once they get to 16, 17, 18, whatever sport they're in, whichever track they're in, they've kind of determined how good they are and where they should go. But that's the sad thing is that they're tricking the parents of these young kids. And I'm glad you brought that up. Let's end on a high note here, Alex. Let's do some lightning round questions.
All right.
Because I know you love lightning round questions. I've seen you answer these on some other shows. But let's talk about young athletes and playing multiple sports, because every sport seems to be year round now. And coaches, because you're paying to play, coaches are like, well, you paid 5,000 to be part of this team. Why are you off playing basketball in the off season? Shit like that, right? So should young athletes play multiple sports, and why?
Unequivocally, I was a very mediocre goalkeeper, but good enough to have a chance at some things. Back when American goalkeepers were globally relevant, and why? It was because they played other sports.
Yeah.
Our hand-eye coordination was second to none. And when they made the jump to Europe in the era that I remember well, we had 3 of the world's top 10 goalkeepers. My God, that's when we were actually good at something. That's gone. That's gone. You have to play multiple sports.
Yeah. And to be honest, to be fair to those coaches that say, you know what, your kid needs to be a part of this team or not a part of this team, like commit to this team, they're being pushed as well, right? They're being told you need to win. It's a pay for play system, so it's like, why would you invest all this money for your kid to try to do multiple sports? But I love this. I see it everywhere on Instagram and social media, where a lot of these professional athletes are now coming out and speaking out against the systems. I won't say the coaches, the systems that are saying play one sport. That doesn't work anymore. I played basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, and track when I was a kid. Every sport has a different skill set. My son is a better football and hockey player because of his soccer skills, right? And back forth. And so I love that answer. Absolutely, young athlete.
But I'm with you. If I was an attorney that had never started my own company, I'd be a worse attorney. If I was
Yep.
an attorney that didn't start 20 companies that failed and 3 that succeeded, I'd be a worse attorney. People don't try enough stuff.
Yeah,
Try more stuff.
that's a soundbite. I love that. Even in business, I don't think you should just be handed a business. I think you should sweep the floors. I think you should be in the accounting pool. I think you should be in the mailroom, right? And you learn everything about it. That's what makes you great, because you see things from every angle. Um, favorite soccer team growing up? I know you're from the
Dynamo Kiev.
Ukraine, but Kiev,
Dynamo
yeah,
Kiev. Dynamo Kiev, 1998, Champions League
yeah.
semifinal, Shevchenko, Rebrov, Shavkovsky. My God. And at that time, it wasn't FIFA that was the most popular video game in the world. It was a game called Winning 11. And one time in my college era at U of M, I played, slept, dreamt, and played so much prior to esports that I was the number 1 player on earth using the Ukrainian national team in Winning 11 soccer. It was dope. I wish I would have got at least $10, but I didn't.
You were just ahead of your time, Alex. That's all.
I missed it. Missed the wave.
So, you said you were 40, so that would make your birthday at 86. So you grew up the first 4 years of your life in, like you said, the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union broke up in 91.
I was born in 85. I broke up in 88. Oh,
When eight,
I moved in 88. I moved in
yes,
88. Yes. Broke up a little later. Yeah.
yeah, it was. I think it was 90 or 91.
Yeah.
Did you not play hockey? Were you not exposed to hockey at all as a kid?
I don't think we had the money. So hockey, not because of coaching fees or anything, just by definition, I think it's an incredibly expensive sport
Yeah, it's
because of ice time.
ice
So
time and equipment.
I played roller hockey in my neighborhood with
Oh
my
wow.
neighborhood buddies.
Okay.
I was actually enjoyed playing goaltender and that. But yeah,
That's a great answer. I love that. Last lightning round question. If you were not so heavily involved in soccer your entire life, what other sport would you want to have played at a higher level?
volleyball.
Okay. Why?
I wish there was more men's volleyball infrastructure throughout the US ecosystem. I think it's sort of growing a bit,
Yeah.
but it's certainly not to the level of other sports where, you can readily join a rec team or a team of any variety. It's tough. Volleyball is such a great game, very similar in many ways to the bits of our game that I love, but great reaction, constant movement,
Yeah.
interchange of positions. What an awesome sport.
So, man, Alex, I want to thank you for being willing to challenge the system that currently exists while still, I guess, building something constructive inside it. Very, very good on you for that. And I want to see Detroit Metro FC succeed, as well as other programs like yours, because that's really rare leadership. So, Where can people find you? Where can people learn more about Detroit Metro FC, and what social media platforms can people find you at so they can learn more?
Yeah, DetroitMetroFC.com. We have Facebook, Insta, TikTok, YouTube, and yeah, we're new, but we're growing.
Excellent. So, to my audience, if this conversation made you rethink youth sports specialization or how we really develop young talent, share it with a parent, share it with a coach, or a club leader, even, because the systems that we tolerate today will shape the adults and athletes of tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.